An ESPN insider has called out the Ohio State Buckeyes, and every single comment that we're going to be breaking down in this video, frankly, they each get more shocking than the last, so we got to break it all down. What's up, guys? I'm Matt Long. Welcome to Columbus Football 365. If you're an Ohio State fan, please hit that subscribe button. Only 5.9% of viewers are subscribed to the channel, so if you're an Ohio State football fan, please hit that subscribe button. But getting into the news for today, coming from ex-NFL quarterback Dan Orlovski, said about the Ohio State Buckeyes, the number one team in the country. He said they're the least tested number one team in the history of college football. They've played nobody. Week 1, Texas. Ever since then, they haven't played anybody. I don't know if they haven't played a team that's ranked right now since Texas. Well, I mean, they haven't played a team that's ranked since Texas, but Ohio State has done more than enough to prove that they are the number one team in the country. When you are a top team in the country, you have to do two things. First, you got to win all your games, obviously, which they've already done. The second thing, when you get the mismatches on your schedule, you need to blow out those teams, proving that you are just that dominant. You can only play the teams that are on your schedule. We can't change the schedule around mid-season just because some teams are they're underperforming. We can only play who's on our schedule. Some of the softest matchups for Ohio State, we proved how dominant this team is. For example, against Minnesota at home early in the season, we won 42-3 versus Grambling State. I know they're not a Power 4 team by any means, but 70-0 against Wisconsin. 34-0. Guys, last week, Wisconsin, who we beat 34-0, they beat ranked Washington. They have a ranked win, and we beat them 34-0. University of Ohio, 37-9. So Ohio State, yes, we haven't played the toughest teams in the world, but when we get a mismatch, we prove it and show the entire world that it is a mismatch. Remember 2 seasons ago when the team up north got their national championship, they were also largely untested throughout the regular season, but they were ranked highly because people could look at the team and they said, that's a really good team, and I don't know if I would take anyone over them. And if you didn't take anyone over them, you would have been correct. They won the national championship. Another thing that we have, Ohio State's, the defense, the points allowed, there is a huge gap between number 1 and number 2. 4.9 points, almost at 5. Ohio State's defense is almost giving up 5 points per game less than the second defense allowing the least points in the college football in Indiana. There is a huge gap, and Ohio State is proving that even though, yes, we aren't playing the toughest teams, we are proving every single week that we are the top team in the country. This allowing only 7.2 points per game is almost impossible and really should never be happening. It is absolutely insane. Ohio State, yes, we're playing the bad teams, but when we have this sort of gap, this is a gap that is, the only thing I can say is it proves that they really are the best. But looking at the teams that Ohio State has beaten on our super, super easy schedule, 3 of these 4 teams were ranked in the top 9 in some point during the season. Texas ranked number 1 when we beat them. Illinois was ranked number 9 a couple weeks, 2 weeks before playing Ohio State. Penn State started the season ranked number 3, at some point got to number 2, and Ohio State beat all these teams, beating Texas 14-7, Ohio State 34-14, Illinois 34-16. These games are not close. Washington, who's also ranked up until last week, 24-6. Ohio State is proving each and every single week that they are the top team in the country with their results. But Dan Orlovski is still not convinced. He went on to continue to say they've been trailing for 1 second in the second half this year. We have no idea who this Ohio State team, of very good teams, the quarterback's a very good player, and Jeremiah Smith is the best player in college football, but we have no idea who Ohio State is down 4 in the fourth quarter. Now, I would say this is a pretty valid argument for Dan Orlovski to have, but are we just glossing over the fact that this team never trails, maybe because they are the best team in college football? And maybe you could make an argument that what he's saying isn't that Ohio State doesn't deserve to be ranked. He's just saying that they are not tested. But the teams they are playing are still good teams. I mean, he gave us credit for Texas, but Penn State's their team, they're losing games because they're not giving effort in the games that aren't big time matchups. Penn State almost beat Indiana last week. Fernando Mendoza needed to go on a crazy 2-minute drill at the end of the year where Omar Cooper had the catch of the year to save that upset. Penn State, when those guys play, they have a good team and they can win games against top teams. Indiana, to me, easily the number 2 team in college football, and Penn State almost beat them. Indiana, they have a better win than we do with that win at Austin Stadium versus Oregon. But look at that recent matchup. Ohio State beat Penn State by 24, and Penn State only lost by 1 score to Indiana. So Ohio State has more than proven that they are the number 1 team in the country. And it's not just the point differentials in the outcomes of the game that show this. Ohio State has 2 players in the top 6 of the Heisman voting, which is absolutely insane. And you could argue that the other wide receiver for Ohio State is playing just as well as Jeremiah Smith and could also be in the top 6 or for Heisman voting. Julian Sayin, depending on what betting market you're looking at, this is from FanDuel, where they have Fernando Mendoza installed as the Heisman betting favorite. But depending on where you look, Julian Sayin is even the favorite in some places. So they have what is seen as the number 1 or number 2 quarterback in college football, the player that, in Dan Orlovski's own words, and pretty much everyone's own words, is the best player in college football in Jeremiah Smith, another top 5 wide receiver in college football, and a top 5 receiver pick in the draft in Carnell Tate. And if the outcomes and the players aren't enough to prove that this is the best team in the country, the head coach, Ryan Day, has the highest winning percentage in the history of college football, combined with an offensive genius in Brian Hartline calling the plays offensively, and a defensive genius coming from the NFL, bringing NFL-style schemes and a defense to the college football level in Matt Patricia as defensive coordinator, arguably the best defensive. I mean, really, I don't think there's any argument. Like Hartline, I'd be willing to hear people out about a different offensive coordinator being, above him for offensive coordinators. But there's no question that Ohio State has the best defensive coordinator in college football. Even though Ohio State does have, you could argue they have the most talented defense in the league, there's a huge gap in the points allowed per game that's not just talent. That is, the coaching is on a different level than these other teams. Ohio State, when we get a mismatch, we absolutely blow that team out. We have the best players, the best coaches. So what if our opponents that are on our schedule, we can't make them play better? And people just act like, the Texas win was nothing when they are ranked in the top 10 currently. I mean, this is just it. Really, people might just be looking for things to talk about when it comes to should Ohio State be ranked the number 1 team in the country, but I really believe it is a no-brainer because there's no weakness to Ohio State's team. You could say, oh, the run game isn't, amazing, isn't top-notch, but the offense is top-notch. So, it's not, you can't exploit, teams aren't not going to be able to exploit the fact that we can't run the ball at an elite level because we throw the ball at elite doesn't even cover it, at best in the country level. Either us or Alabama, the best passing offense in college football. There really should not be an argument about who the number 1 team in the country is. It has to be Ohio State Buckeyes. We can't control the schedule. We can only play who's on, or we could have controlled the schedule, but we don't know. Going into the year, every team changes. We scheduled the number 1 team going into the year. It's not our fault they can't live up to the billing as the number 1 team. And let's not act like Texas isn't a great team. They're a fantastic football team. And some of these other teams, Ohio State makes them look like they aren't top teams. Ohio State, by blowing out Washington, held them off the rankings for a really long time. But the farther teams get away from playing Ohio State, they start creeping up in the rankings. And right now, Washington and Illinois, they're both in the mix of receiving votes for a ranking right now. So while Ohio State does only have a win against 1 currently ranked team in Texas, they have teams that are on the the cuff of being ranked. They've wins against teams like Penn State, who are more than capable of beating the top teams in the country, like we saw last weekend. So Ohio State, there's the rankings at the end of the day. It doesn't matter who thinks who should be ranked one. It all comes down to what happens on the field. And fortunately, it's not the way it used to be. There is a college football playoff where we have the opportunity to prove who the number one team is on the football field. So I'm just grateful for that opportunity. Can't wait to see what Ohio State does against UCLA and the rest of the way that this very exciting season is going to shape out for the Ohio State Buckeyes, hopefully with a back-to-back championship season. Let's do it. If you stuck around this long, appreciate you taking the time to watch the video all the way through. Please hit that like button if you haven't already. Hit the subscribe button if you're new to the channel, and go Buckeyes.